Thank you all for being here and for all the people who have put in a ton of work to get this going. We have our first presenter, and I think her talk is scheduled to be happening right now, so I don't want to hold up things too much, but just a brief introduction. We have been doing this summit for quite a few years. This year, our theme is on the road again, and we will be having 4 different talks on different types of transportation for you all to learn about and teach us about as well. So first we're going to have Jodi Connolly getting going transportation tips and tools, and she will introduce herself very shortly. We'll have a break during which we're going to have some community driver demonstrations right out front in those front spots. And then we will have Drive On, Empowering SCI Survivors Through Adaptive Driving. That's going to be a panel presentation with Jen Fox, who does adaptive driving, as well as Adam Goetz and Daniel Gray, who are our community drivers who have graciously agreed to do this panel. We'll have another break. We have a wonderful presentation by Kenny Salvini and Jeremy Hannaford related to conquering unfriendly skies and flying with a spinal cord injury. We'll have another longer break with community drivers out in the parking lot. And then our final presentation is going to be Accessible Trails and Outdoors with Ian McKay, who, if you don't know, is a wonderful advocate for SCI and will be here to talk to us as well. And I will turn this over to Jodi Connolly.
Okay, can you all hear me back there? Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm Jodi Connolly. Thanks for the intro. I'm a recreational therapist at Harborview. I've been there 24 years plus and have loved most every minute of it. And I'm happy that I've been able to be both on inpatient rehab, outpatient rehab, and now solely with the ADA paratransit evaluations at Harborview. And when I first moved away from doing inpatient and outpatient rehab, I was kind of sad, like, I'm just going to do transportation. But it didn't take long, and it's just grown over the years to remember what an important connection transportation is to the community for the people who've experienced spinal cord injury and every other type of injury or reason that people come to need different types of transportation. And so I know I'm speaking to the experts here, so I want to acknowledge that everybody here knows how important it is, and we are all here in this room right now, but we all used something to get here today, and so making those connections is really what this is all about. And so it's a real honor to be here, and at risk of saying things that you already know, I want to go ahead and do a lot of that today, because you never know when one thing might make a difference to one person to help them get connected to the thing that they couldn't do before. And I feel like, if anything, what I want to do is really just open up the door to talking about what some of these options are and some of these tools, and and maybe more importantly, let you all have an opportunity to share with each other what works for you that you might not have expected, and might help somebody else, or vice versa. If you have something that's just like bugging you and you need help with a solution, like to connect with each other about that. So when we finish at the end with Q&A, I want it not only to be to me, but if anyone here can answer a question better or has a solution that someone might have a question for, even better. So the objectives today really are to help understand different transportation options, and they all have different things that they do and equally important don't do. So I want to talk some about the things that transportation options that are out there don't do, so that we don't go into things with certain expectations and then just it flops, because that's not very helpful. Payment options and apps, there's a lot of advancement now in how to pay for transportation, and also so many different apps that I'm sure even the few that I mentioned today are just going to scratch the surface, but that might be useful tools for helping to navigate the community. And then travel and moving considerations, sometimes thinking about going somewhere on a trip or visiting somebody can be daunting, especially if someone's already set in their transportation options that work near home, and what's it going to be like when I go somewhere. So just a few things to think about in that. And then also for those who may have the opportunity or luxury to think about where they're going to live, then some things in terms of transportation that might be worth thinking about. Infrastructure improvements and community input opportunities. We all know how important the built world is and how to get around in it, and maybe looking for opportunities to improve in our own communities. And then, again, sharing what works for you or for others. So the transportation options I'm going to talk about today, and I'll skip down to the bottom and say the ones I'm not really going to talk about, which would be the more like private vehicles, flying cabulants, ferries, employer shuttles, things like that. Those are, I'm not really going to talk about much of those. I mean, there's planes, trains, automobiles, all kinds of ways to get around. But the ones I'll focus on more are public transit. The example I'll use mostly today is Metro, King County Metro, because we are in King County. That's what I'm most familiar with, but want to touch on, and we have resources in the back for neighboring counties, and the neighboring counties do have some reciprocal features. Neighborhood shuttles that are available in King County areas, wheelchair accessible taxis, and then again, moving our bodies around through our communities and not putting them into other vehicles, but rather being a pedestrian, whether that's walking, propelling, biking, driving a chair, scooter, whatever works for you. So again, my example for public transit I'll mostly focus on today is going to be the King County Metro, since we're in King County. And the idea of King County Metro, it's not just the buses that we see and might typically think about as what Metro is, but it's also the additional services like the Metro Flex and the community van and van pools and ride share and things like that. I'll focus more on accessible services as a department within King County Metro, and different counties have other, or transit authorities have these sections as well. And within accessible services, I think a lot of us just think right away of the access bus. But there's a lot more to accessible services, both what we can see and what we can't see. And that can be accessible features that, that are there, like lifts and ramps, calling out stops, the different features on a vehicle like the securement areas, learning how to use those properly and instruct people on how and what the important part of your chair is that a driver be able to hook up to, and knowing what works for you and what doesn't when getting on and off. But those features are there. Interacting with them can or can't be successful depending on the person and sometimes the driver. But other things that we can't necessarily see is that Metro Accessible Services also has transit instructors that will work with people one-on-one or one-on-family, you know, depending on who the person is, who the rider is. There are instructors that will work with people for free to come and meet and say, you know, who is your team that you want to be part of, you're navigating out in the community, or is it just you? And that's great. Let's look at what might be not only places you might want to go regularly, but what a bus or public transit route might be that could potentially be successful. And they do path of travel review, like what's it like going from your home to the closest bus stop, or maybe not the closest, maybe it's farther, but it's flatter and has better accessibility. You know, they can kind of do the footwork to help you to look for that accessible route, and then they go with you the first few trips, and then wean off of that depending on success. And so again, all these things, they don't work for everyone, but those opportunities are there if it makes sense to you. And then lift ramp training. We're so glad to have one of the buses here today so that you can do and see what lift ramp training is all about and get a chance to get on and off of a Metro bus without being under the pressure of it being on a route. And this also happens once a month at Harborview. The Metro comes and parks a bus outside, and you can schedule an opportunity to go and practice more with a driver and a trainer. So that's a great feature they have. And then there's the ADA paratransit, which I'll talk a little bit more about in just a moment. And I'll also talk more about the MetroFlex and the community van. Just a broad brush of what paratransit is, or for those of you who might not be familiar, I'm sure many of you are, but paratransit is, I'm going to read this one out. I don't love reading slides, but I think this is important. The Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, requires public transit agencies that provide fixed route service, and I'll pause and say fixed route means that's a route that does not change. It's a bus or a vehicle that goes a certain route, has particular stops, and they can't deviate off of that route. So public transit agencies that provide fixed route service to provide complementary paratransit service to people with disabilities who cannot use the fixed route bus or rail service because of a disability. And I put an extra note here, the parentheses are mine, not complimentary. A lot of people will come to us at Harborview when we do their assessment and they say, this is free, this is free. I never understood why people think that it's free, and then I was like, wait a minute. When I saw this and read it, I'm like, maybe this is one of the reasons. So whether it is or not, I just want to clarify that access paratransit systems are not free. The rider pays for their ride. For access, Metro Access, it's $1.75 a ride. Personal care attendant rides for free. But it's complimentary, as in provides a complimentary service. Okay. And then I've got links. If you all want the slideshow later, we can maybe hopefully figure out a way to do this. Okay. And then let's move on. So access, I want to talk about what it is and what it isn't. So it is ADA paratransit system. So it's required by the federal government, the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's available the same days and times as regular fixed route buses within King County. Usually it's about a 3/4 of a mile radius outside of the bus line itself, so that that area is provided with that service, but not at like necessarily 1 a.m. way out past Falls City or something like that. It's going to be in the areas where there's already a bus system provided. It's for those whose disabling condition prevents use of a regular bus system some or all of the time. That's again based on the ADA. It's a shared ride. It's not a private service, one person, you get your free ride, your ride from one place to another. You can expect to pick up and drop people off along the way. It's, again, $1.75 per trip. And since it's public transit, it has to be designated just for medical. A lot of people will think that, oh, I can only use it to go to medical appointments. No, bus driver doesn't ask me why I'm getting on the bus today. They're not going to ask you why you're getting on the access bus. That's the destination, the trip, the purpose of the trip is up to the rider. It is not medical-only transportation. That's kind of a different way of saying the same thing. It's not always the fastest option. Some folks will say, but it's going to take me so long to take a bus. And usually there's more behind that. Like there's a lot of transfers. It's really exhausting. There's, I can't do my tilt back or something like that. But it's not guaranteed to always be the fastest. And you can't make changes day of, but you can schedule a day ahead up to a week ahead. And all right, let's move along because I know we're already closing in on time. This is I think it's a really cool newish thing that Metro is doing now. It's sort of like a localized Uber. This is only in these specific areas though within King County, location specific. So Juanita, Issaquah, Sammamish, Othello, Rainier Beach, Renton, Tukwila, and Kent. But if you're in one of those areas, there are lift-equipped vehicles. You can request lift-equipped, that you can download an app called and that's what it looks like, MetroFlex app. And then it's the price of a regular fare on a Metro bus. So if you have a regional reduced fare permit, it's $1 trip. It's on demand. You can request with the app like you do in Uber, and then if you say that you need an accessible trip, they'll pick you up at your location. You don't have to go a block or two away to meet the vehicle. So if you're using it, be sure to check off that you need the accessible trip, and they'll do it point to point. It's real-time booking, and yeah, again, it just has to be within that service area. So there's lots of reasons it's different than an Uber, but it's the same idea that it's on demand, it's available real-time. So that's kind of exciting.
Pretty responsive, like Lyft and Uber is like 5 minutes.
I know.
Those,
Yeah.
I
I do not know. Very good question. Has anyone here used it? Yeah? How's it been? Good? Thumbs up? Good. I've heard great reports about it, but I don't know what great is for one person versus the other. Maybe try it on a trip that doesn't matter or something, and then.
Did you use one that was accessed like a Lyft option? Just thinking about our patients who maybe access canceled or late and they
Right.
last minute, is this an option for them?
Great point. It would be, but Harborview's not. I don't know where you work. Where you? Montlake. Oh, yeah. There's not one there. So it's very location specific. Maybe that's why they can be so quick. So, but like run to the store or pharmacy or something. I don't know. Yeah, a lot of these again, they might be few and far between for those that if it's applicable to you, but for those that it might be, like it could be really cool. The Hyde Shuttle is another neighborhood specific, but larger. Like all of City of Kent has one. All of City of Auburn has one. West Seattle and South Park have one. So the Hyde Shuttle is run by Sound Generations, which is the branding for King County Senior Services. And you sign up on the phone, so you don't have to go in, fill out an application, or go in for an appointment. It is free. Donations are accepted. You call to schedule the rides. There's a limited number of vehicles within each area, though, so that does mean sometimes they can't guarantee your ride, or they'll just say, we're full that day. They are accessible vehicles, and Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. They're basically the same type of vehicle as access buses because Metro gives Senior Services the vehicles and then Senior Services runs the program. But again, for those that it works great. For some people, it's just not going to work for them because they need to go a town over or they need a certain day and time. And here are the service areas that Hyde has shuttles. So for those of you who can't see, that's most of western King County, so Shoreline all the way down to Auburn and Federal Way. And there's a couple good services out in Snoqualmie Valley, and one of them is the Hyde Shuttle there. And the newest one is Skyway. And there's another one too that I'm not thinking of right this second. And we have all this information back on our back table. Buffy, can you raise your hand? Buffy's back there. We've got all of this resource information back there too. Community van, this is kind of a quirky one that might work for someone, I don't know. In these areas, Algona Pacific, Duval Carnation, you can see on the right here, and we have that information back here also. These are vehicles, they have some lift-equipped ones that you can schedule a group of people in your community to go do an activity, and then you can use this van and either have a volunteer driver drive it, or if you or a family member wants to become one of the volunteer drivers through Metro, they will train you, and then you can become a contact person and maybe go do your own trip. I don't know, thinking, holiday family get-togethers or a trip to the park with some friends or something. Again, I don't know anyone. Has anyone used this before? You've used it, yeah.
My husband volunteered in Sammamish as
Uh-huh.
a driver, and there were people who went to work out in Redmond from Sammamish. He would drive them to do that.
Great.
We had a large family group come to town, and we took them in and drove them around, and it was just the same fare you pay for bus service.
Could you all hear back there? Okay, she said that her husband drove as a volunteer driver for this for a while, and they were able to do things. Each passenger pays the same fare as Metro regular fare, but they were able to take people to go from one town to another to do an activity or to do a family get together. So that could be a creative solution for those who don't have an accessible van. And you're standing here. We got to wrap up, don't we? I'm going to run through this. Payments and apps like Orca Card, Regional Reduced Fare Permit, is a great way to have it be just $1 for any of these trips. We have information in the back on how to get one of those if you're eligible. Taxi Script, those are available for use on the wheelchair accessible taxis. And the Taxi Script is for those who have a Regional Reduced Fare Permit and are also below a certain household income level. We have all that information back there. And the subsidized annual pass, there are 7 different state programs that mean that if you're eligible through one of those, you can get a free pass, annual pass to use on Metro. And then different apps that can help. Transit Go has kind of been a game changer for a lot of folks who use Access. You don't have to carry cash anymore, but those of you who use it know you can't really use an Orca card very easily on, or at all really, on Access. So this is an app to be able to do that. And you can be sure to enter your information or call customer services so that you're buying the kind of fare that is relevant to you and not paying more than you need to. And the couple other apps I listed here, One Bus Away and Google Maps, always good for, I shouldn't say always because I don't use them for accessibility reasons, but can be useful for augmenting your experience. I think the big, I have some extra time, okay, travel. For those of you who like to go places, but you don't know what transportation is going to look like when you get there, if you're eligible for Access or for your county's ADA paratransit service, it's reciprocal or some kind of a guest opportunity when you get to where you're traveling to. Call or contact the county transit agency that you're going to be near. And they usually have to get paperwork or a call or some verification from where you live from the transit agency that you are eligible in, and they'll give you, for example, like a 21 days out of the year for free. Or every county manages it differently, but you can expect there to be some level of transportation option for you when you get where you're going if you're currently eligible within King County. So for those of you who have no real need for it right now here, if you want to become eligible, just so you know when you travel, there might be an option. I don't know if that works or not, but it's something to think about. I was super excited to find this, for those who it's relevant, this Flush or Toilet Finder app. There's actually an app called Flush, and there's an app called Toilet Finder. And they are real time. It can see where you are if you give it your location, and then it can show you where the closest public bathroom is or bathroom you can use, and then it's crowdsourced. That's something else people can consider doing while they're using these apps, whether you have a spinal cord injury or not. Like, look at that bathroom, give the input, say if it's accessible or if it says it is but it's not really usable, whatever. You can plan some important things knowing where bathrooms are. Acknowledging that moving or living where we live is not always an option to make that choice. If you do find yourself in an option of making that choice, I think that looking at the accessibility of inside the house is always, or home is always clear that that's very important. Similarly, looking at connection to the community, also very important. Again, I am already telling the experts this, but some of those things to look at would be what we're talking about today: the public transit options, paratransit availability, neighborhood shuttle availability, and any local infrastructure. Some creative ways if you don't know how accessible things are, if you're closer to a school or a park or things like that. Sometimes municipalities will make a little more effort to make those routes within rolling walking distance a little bit more accessible. And then some different ways to get involved in making improvements within our own communities. Again, I know that everybody's had probably mixed opportunities to share ideas, frustrations, hopefully making some changes. It's hard when we all feel like we need to be the ones to do it, but there are things like the Find It, Fix It app within King County, within Seattle, to be able to express, broken sidewalks or overgrown vegetation that impair your route, potholes in the middle of a crosswalk, things like that. So you download the app, Find It, Fix It, take a picture of it and send it in, and that goes to their customer services. And I looked in different cities around here have that too, like Kent, and just look up your municipality and see what that route is. And then I'm sure a lot of folks in here have probably been on advisory boards, but opportunities could be like the pedestrian advisory board, public transit agencies, and just showing up at public meetings and different stages of design and giving input that's really critical before it gets too far. And then I have a page of different websites and resources. Again, all of this is back here also, and we just want to open it up. Does anyone have a question or a comment on something that worked that you might have been surprised about? Let's start with questions. Anyone have a question right now? Any comments or things people want to share about some transportation option that has worked for them they might have been surprised about? Yeah.
I just have a question about, like, when you're traveling or you're thinking about where you're going to go, are there consistent websites, or are you just kind of looking for accessible transportation and put in where you're headed?
Right. So first I'll say I have never been one to have to be dependent on what that's going to be when I get somewhere. When I have given information to people about where to check in, I always go to the local transit agency, like maybe Richmond, Virginia. I actually have been there. Anyway, I won't get too literal. I would say I've never been to Richmond. What am I going to do? I'm going to go Richmond, Virginia Public Transit, and then see what agencies there are there, and then look for accessibility, and usually under that it's going to say ADA paratransit, or just call their customer services line and say, hey, look, I want to go visit. I like using public transit in my area, whatever your situation is, and then go from there. And often if they don't have something, they could give you some ideas at least, but hopefully, right? Keep asking.
Okay, so my question is, if I'm traveling to a certain city, how do I know if they have like wheelchair accessible taxis that could take me from place to place?
Great question. I don't know. I do know that when I Googled King County or Seattle wheelchair accessible taxis here, it took me to a website about it and some phone numbers. So I would just do the same to see, Google that. Google it. I don't know.
I tried.
You did?
But-
okay, didn't work.
It didn't work. So if
Yeah.
anybody has an idea, then
Yeah,
I'm happy to hear it.
anyone have an idea about the wheelchair accessible taxis in a different area? Okay, we have a gentleman back here.
Do you want this?
Is it about that?
I think you guys can hear me.
Yeah.
This is for the, yeah.
Oh, for the feed. Hi. So one of the things that the problem that I had was when I ordered a wheelchair accessible taxi, they came and thought that I was a para and that they could get my power chair into a Prius. So I had to be really clear that
Yeah.
I need a wheelchair accessible taxi because I'm in a power chair. The dispatchers don't always understand
Got it.
the difference between our chairs. So I've been successful in being able to order them. It's just sometimes it's difficult in how long it takes because there's not as many of them as others. And I've been at like hotels before. Like I was in Las Vegas, watching lots of nothing against you paras, but watching lots of paras being able to get into other taxis that I couldn't. The other thing I was going to say is in regard to up in my county, I'm up in Whatcom County. It's the vehicles that allow us to be able to get into the smaller vehicle, like the Hyde. Jodi, I'm not sure what that term was again. The lost for words. Sorry. Not the Metroflex, Kenny, but the vans that you can get up into. Anyway, they wanting to be able to have to use something like that in a different city. Yes, my credentials could go over to that other county, but they needed like 30 days lead time. I thought, I'll just order it, next week. And they were like, oh no, you need 30 days. So I just want to share that experience.
Yeah, I want to be sure to answer the question. I think it's more you're given a good example and warning that even if some place has wheelchair accessible vehicles, you really have to do a lot more up front to be sure what that really is and not just assume. Yeah. Is that kind of what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of long-winded, but yeah, I wanted to order a van from the airport to the hotel I was going to stay at.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we could do that. We just need your documentation from your county, and we need 30 days to process
To
that.
process it. Okay, good heads up, good heads up. So could be possible, but could be too late if it's not planned ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Kenny Salvini here. I've traveled a little bit around the country, and New York City's got a great mass transit amount of access. Their buses are great, but the same thing with the I think it's a Manhattan Transport or Transit Authority that does same thing. You got to give them some lead time with some of the documentation, but they're really
Okay.
great with bus access. And I think in New York City itself, I think all of their cabs have to be 50% wheelchair accessible vehicles. So that's a good spot if anybody goes there. And then Washington, D.C. is a great place to use their metro, their kind of light rail system. That's a really great one to get around. So
Great.
those are just a couple of spots that I've, when you have to do a little research ahead of time, but it's worth it. So.
Okay. Did everybody hear that up here? New York City and Washington, D.C., great places to visit. Again, do the paperwork, lead time, 30 days or more, or just plan as much as you can to make sure that that's all taken care of before you get there. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Keep sharing ideas and things that work and questions you have. And I'm handing it over to Heather. Thanks, Heather. It's on.
Thank you so much.